media outlets are panning that performance as offensive, and others saying that nobody cared. One Vanity Fair writer even accusing the comedian of repeating a, quote, right-wing talking point. Ricky Gervais, however, is hitting right back on Twitter, saying, how the bleep can teasing huge corporations and the richest, most privileged people in the world be considered right-wing? Does he have a point, Greg?
Number one, Ricky Gervais isn't a right-winger. He's a strong, outspoken liberal. He doesn't like Trump. But the thing is, this isn't about right or left. This is about freedom of expression. And I think what should be uniting conservatives and liberals or whatever stripe is the rift that's going on among liberalisms between free expression and those who want to silence people on campus. And that's where Ricky Gervais is coming from. If you read his Twitter feed, he is expressing his own personal outrage over the cancel culture, about how people are constantly being attacked for things that they're saying. And it's very healthy that it comes from him, from somebody of the left. No liberal is going to listen to me, because you're just going to say, Fox News, that guy, he trashes everybody. And, you know, they're right. But when he comes out and he's upset, Ricky Gervais is upset because he's so confident in his liberal ideas that the refusal to listen to other ideas, which is happening right now in the regressive left, enrages him. It's a pathetic sign of weakness. So it's the hard left that is actually destroying liberalism, not Trumpism or not conservatism. And I think that's what's fueling his fire and why he's so disgusted and angry. Yeah. But do not mistake that for him becoming a conservative. Yeah. He's as liberal. And the only politics he's really into, and very strongly, is animal rights. This is a guy who spends a lot of time dealing with the humane issues with animals. But it's really about the rift between old school liberals like Juan and the social justice creep that is trying to silence people like Juan.
He also I would agree, because I've been muzzled.
Yes. You wrote a book called Muzzled.
Right. So I understand what it is. And in that point, I would say yes. Yeah. By the way, I didn't even know who Ricky Gervais was.
How dare you? He's the best sitcom ever, The Office.
Yeah, but I just didn't get it. Around here, he's a star right now because of what he did. But the question is, one, do you really think that people didn't make political speeches after he spoke?
I think they did. They
definitely did. So I don't think it had that impact. I think the impact it had was on people who are conservative. Said, finally, here's somebody voicing,
but it's not a
disdain for these rich, famous, arrogant people who want to tell us.
But Juan, go back to the point, though. They're criticizing him. The Hollywood elites are criticizing him for right-wing talking points. And he said, what about going after large corporations and
no, I
rich,
agree.
wealthy
No, that's where Greg and I agree.
Hollywood
he shouldn't be muzzled. And if that was the point of what he did, to say this is legitimate speech and it's free speech coming from the left, hats off. But the contrary, the support for him is coming from the right, which sees it as he was out there whipping up on the left.
Have you been listening to the Dave Chappelles of the world? This is about the mob. This is about people are so sick and tired of everything in their life being controlled by their past, or if they decide to take a joke. I have friends of mine majority of my friends are liberal. They tell me that they can't share a post that they may agree from Fox News because they'll get fired. Or they won't be invited to the next get-together or something, because that's how the mob works. And this is a guy who's a liberal that just wants freedom of expression.
Yeah, he's speaking out against the mob, but it's also about the fact that what he said was true. Yeah. And he's calling them out on behavior that they lectured the rest of America about not doing while they engage in it, and it's about elitism. They're allowed to do whatever they want, while the people that they think are not good enough or not rich enough or aren't in the Hollywood liberal circles, they're not allowed to participate, but they have to be quelled and do what they think is the right thing to do, whether it's climate change or health care or anything else like that. And Ricky Gervais is a liberal. He's not a woke leftist. And I think this is something that is pervasive throughout comedy, but also just liberals in general. On the train today, there are people complaining about woke leftists.
He's
but they
thrilled
were saying
with the reaction.
Yeah.
He tweeted out, best reaction ever. Means a lot to me. I had a blast, and thank bleep, it's over, he said.
What do you think they bleeped there, Sandra?
I don't know, Greg.
What does it rhyme with?